makes its way down towards LZ4. Is back now with the Falcon 9 first stage. Occasionally you'll see little puffs in between those hypersonic grid fins. You can see them tilting now. There's the entry burn getting underway. Also the reason you're seeing some toggling between the camera views on the upper stage, according to John Edwards, who's the vice president of Falcon launch vehicles at SpaceX, says they do that in order to, quote, keep an eye on both sides of the engine in case any issues develop in flight, such as nozzle streaking. So they're looking for hot or cold spots that are caused by what he describes as non-uniform turbine exhaust distribution. Call that Stage 1 FTS is saved. The flight termination system has now been deactivated as it's making its way back down towards Vandenberg Space Force Base. Stage is now transonic. Now below the speed of sound, you can see the speedometer dropping precipitously. Here's the start of that landing burn. Let's go ahead and listen in.
Engine has now lit. We are slowing the vehicle down very rapidly. Should be seeing those landing legs deploy any second now.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And there you have it. We have successfully made the 279th landing of an orbital class rocket.
Stage 2 FTS has saved.
Coming up next, we will have the second stage engine cutoff, or SECO-1. And following that, we will enter into just about a 40-minute coast phase as the vehicle ascends to its target orbit.
And as you saw and heard the call-outs for, a good call-out, good sights and sounds of the Falcon 9 first stage touching down at LZ4 for the third time following its third launch. Here you see SECO-1, that MVAC shutdown. They're entering into a coast phase at this point. And fortunately, because this is not while it is a national security space launch system mission, it is an unclassified payload, which means we will actually get to continue on with the SpaceX feed on and through to the point of spacecraft separation. You can see on this telemetry map the path of the second stage following that blue line there. Popping back over to our graphics for just a moment, let you know the timing of the events here as they come about. We just passed through second stage engine cutoff, what you saw there as the Merlin vacuum engine ceased firing as it went into a coast phase. Coming up next will be the reignition of that engine for a second burn. SES-2, or second stage engine start, at T plus 49 minutes and 51 seconds. That 5-second burn will conclude, and that'll set up for the deployment of the spacecraft at T plus 54 minutes and 57 seconds. So far, all moving well on this mission here, dubbed USSF 62. If you joined us after we talked about the spacecraft itself, want to go ahead and go back to that for a minute since we have about, over 30 minutes before the next event here. Or I guess just a little bit hair under 30 minutes before the Merlin vacuum engine reignites. This is a rendering of the spacecraft that will be deployed, the weather satellite known as the Weather System Follow-on Microwave, or WSFM space vehicle. Built by Ball Aerospace, which is a company now owned by BAE Systems. That acquisition went through just earlier this year, as a matter of fact. Ball Aerospace was contracted by the Air Force to design and manufacture this spacecraft. Back in 2017 was when they got their first contract award for this work. They were awarded a $93.7 million firm fixed price contract back in November of 2017. About a year later, they received a $255.4 million contract modification, allowing for, quote, the option for the development and fabrication of the space vehicle itself, with the goal of having it completed in January of 2023. Spacecraft passed a critical design review in April of 2020. That's when the fabrication of the spacecraft actually began. This is all designed to replace what you see here on your screen. This is an artist rendering of the Defense Satellite Applications Program spacecraft on orbit. That's what it was originally called, the DASP, later referred to as the Defense Meteorological Satellite Program. The first one of these launched back in 1962, declassified in 1972. These satellites originally fell under the purview of the National Reconnaissance Office as part of what they called the Corona program. You can read about that more in our article currently up on spaceflightnow.com. By the early 90s, an agreement was forged between the Department of Defense, the Department of Commerce, and NASA to converge their polar orbiting weather satellite programs. And while the funding for these stayed with the Department of Defense, by June of 1998, the operational responsibility was given over to the Department of Commerce. And for those not familiar with the inner workings of U.S. government agencies, I don't blame you. NOAA, or the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, falls under the Department of Commerce, and their Office of Satellite and Product Operations was the part of that agency that oversaw this program after 1998. Over the decades following that, though, there were a number of issues that cropped up, ultimately leading Congress to cancel the program in 2015,
que una vez más les recuerde
including the
que
breakup
los argentinos
of
estamos
a
ante
few
dos
of these
caminos.
satellites on
Uno, la
orbit.
libertad de
Those
todos
included
nosotros,
the
que en
DMSP
definitiva es lo que eligió la gente
number
cuando
F11,
votó al presidente Milei
F13,
hace algunos meses atrás,
F19
y el otro es
spacecraft.
el que efectivamente
all
estamos viendo
having
hoy,
issues. The
el
F-19,
de aquellos que utilizan
actually
el
just 2
amedrentamiento
years
y
into
le
its
complican
planned
la vida a la
5-year
gente.
mission
El de
when it
especulación
suffered what was described as a
y
power
no
anomaly,
el de la búsqueda del bien común.
which
En lo que
prevented
va del
controllers on the
año,
ground from being
por
able
parte
to
de
operate it as intended.
quienes hoy están parando, recibimos
There are currently
4
still
amenazas
3 of
nacional
these
está
spacecraft
cumpliendo con
remaining on
cada
orbit.
uno
They
de los
are
desembolsos
the F-16,
de los
F-17, and F-18 designations, launched in 2003, 2006, and 2009, respectively. The F-17 and 18 models do have an expected end-of-life date in the year 2025, coming up soon. F-16 was expected to conclude its mission in December of 2023. It's according to the Committee on Earth Observation Satellites. However, that end-of-life date was extended. Unclear exactly for how long. But the spacecraft designed to replace it are the two that are launching and what we just saw lift off today, currently on board the Falcon 9 second stage. That is the one you see in this picture here, going through some final checkouts at Ball Aerospace's facilities in Colorado before it was shipped over to Vandenberg Space Force Base. The second space vehicle is currently in work. In November of 2022, Ball received a $78.3 million firm fixed price contract modification to begin developing that second spacecraft. According to the contract language from the Air Force, it has an expected completion date of November 15th of 2027, aiming to launch the second of these two space vehicles by about January of 2028. Of course, we'll see if they're able to keep that timeline. Certainly would be important for the capabilities that these are providing, since the satellites that they're going to be taking over the capabilities of and advancing them are certainly aging out, to say the least. This is an image of that first space vehicle prior to its encapsulation ahead of today's flight, which we saw a good lift off on. Taking a look back at our live chat. Want to thank Cake Invasion for $2 Canadian super chat. Really appreciate that, Cake. One of our channel members, SG, for a $2 super chat. Thank you so much, SG. Really appreciate that support this morning. And I want to welcome our newest channel member, Titan1, joining us at the pad leader level. Really appreciate that, Titan. Glad to have you with us. Channel membership, of course, comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, shop.spaceflightnow.com. Access to member-only videos here on YouTube. And the ability to watch all of our Cape-based launches in 4K.
Aterrizó el avión y